It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview Brett Lofftis, who is a Piedmount Junior sports communication major. How are you doing today?
Doing great, man. I'm just happy to be on the podcast. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to be a sports broadcaster?
Well, it kind of started when I was little. It's something that I wanted to do my entire life. And then I got to Piedmont in 2019 as a freshman and started working with the sports communications, the athletic communications people, and Danielle Percival, who's our sports information director. And, I really started out with more or less the behind the scenes work. And then I used on in at the end of our basketball season, at the end of the 1920 basketball season, just kind of doing play-by-play and doing the broadcast. And then when baseball started up, I full-fledged was into baseball, and I did, I think, all but one of the baseball broadcasts. And then this year I've done every single one of the Piedmont basketball games, both men's and women's, that we've been able to have with my good buddy Davis Barlow. So it's a very great experience, especially me being only a college junior and helping to be, one of the voices of the Lions. It's a really great experience, and just happy that I have this opportunity.
Can you talk about what it's like being the play-by-play and what kind of stuff you have to prepare for and do?
Well, being a play-by-play, you really have to know your team, foremost. I mean, being a Division III school, knowing the other team is something that you'll really do throughout the game. I mean, you'll want to know who the starting five is. You'll want to know, as far as basketball, you'll want to know who your key players are, who their leading returner score is. But, I mean, you're going to know who your own Lions team is every game. And you have to know how well they played in the last game, how they've played this team before. And it's almost like being a player, if I had to compare it to anything, because you have to know who your top players is, and you have to know who you need to prepare for to score, and who you need to know whose name you got to say a lot as a broadcaster. And you also have to know who's going to come up on the other side and who's going to play well. And just it's being very fluid and very adjustable, especially in a year with COVID. We have to be able to – I mean, for example, we had a men's and women's basketball game. We had a women's basketball game earlier this year, and there was a girl playing the entire first half, and my broadcast partner and I had no idea what the girl's name was because she was not on the roster. So, I mean, you just have to really be prepared. You have to know what's going on, and that's really the biggest thing for me, is just not messing up names and keeping the pace of action and keeping energy up while on the broadcast.
Can you talk about, of course, how hard it is to not mess up people's names, and also, like, for example, you said like one of the players was not on the roster. Like, for example, I know at Vanderbilt with the kicker, she was not on the roster until like halfway to the season ended due to COVID.
Right, and I think it was just a mishap on the end of the sports information people at the college that we were playing. They had put the girl on the roster and then changed her number. And then the other girl, she had a number on that was not on the roster, nor was her name on the roster. And as far as mispronouncing names, it's just going up to the coach before the game, or going up to your SID before the game, Miss Danielle Percival, and just going up to her and said, hey, how do I pronounce this person's name, or how do I do this, or how do I asking questions. Never being afraid to ask questions is very key in the sports business. And the more questions you ask, the more knowledge you'll gain, and then the more that it'll help you become a better broadcaster. And I just think that's really what it comes down to, is asking questions, and when you don't really know what's going on.
Can you talk about, of course, the Good Morning Sports podcast that you started?
Yeah, the Good Morning Sports podcast started back in late April if I'm not mistaken, I think it was April 25th. Don't hold me to that, though, Brandon. We put our first episode out. It's me, my good friend, my best friend from school, my roommate, Presley Field. He's a left-handed pitcher for the Piedmount baseball team. And we just wanted to start something up during quarantine and do a podcast. And we came up with Good Morning Sports Podcast. We already had a radio show at school on the radio station at Z98.7 FM. WPCZ, the student-run radio station at Piedmont College. We had a radio show on there, and then we started up and we did a podcast, and the podcast really grew. We got a lot of avid listeners. We had a lot of our buddies that either play athletics at Piedmont or know a lot about sports at Piedmont. We had some guests on, and I really encourage you to go listen to it. It's Good Morning Sports. It's an orange background with Brett Lofftis and Presley Field, and it's a really good podcast, if I have to say so myself. Presley and I getting some good arguments on there and some good debates. We have not recorded since July, as when we went back to school, we were just so busy. And I think we're going to try to record over the break if we can. So, yeah, that's just kind of how that started, another quarantine project like many people had. So, I really enjoy it and really, really love podcasts. So.
Can you talk about, of course, your own sports podcast, the Brett Sports Talk Show?
Yeah, so the Brett Sports Talk Show, I started it in June or July. I want to say July. I started it, and I started it as kind of a daily or weekly thing. And it's mainly on Instagram. I have some videos on YouTube, but it's mainly on Instagram. It's just me talking about sports, and it's just giving my opinions, giving my predictions, giving kind of a rundown of what's happened this week in sports. I don't really do videos anymore, but I will go live. So, for example, after LSU beat Florida this past Saturday, which I was really excited about as I'm a UGA fan, but after Florida got knocked down on last Saturday, I went live on there and kind of talked for a few minutes and got some viewers on there. So that's kind of what that's about. So if you enjoy that, follow Brett Sports Talk Show, all one word, on Instagram.
Can you talk about, of course, like what are some of the topics that you talk about on the Brett Sports Talk?
So I have my favorite episode would be when I talked about Steve Smith, former Carolina Panther, one of the greatest wide receivers in all of NFL history. And I talked about him on there. He's my favorite athlete of all time. And I just kind of talked about giving a rundown of what happened that weekend in sports, because that was back when there were not a lot of sports going on. You pretty much had PGA Tour was going on. You had NASCAR going on. And it was when Major League Baseball was about to start back up, and the NBA was kind of doing their exhibition games in the bubble right before the regular season was going to start back. So that was when everything was starting back up from COVID. So that's kind of what I talked about on there. And then I'll talk about, like I said, I'll go live if something big happens, or if, Q&A, or if somebody else wants to go live with me, and we'll kind of have like a show like Brandon, like you and I are doing right now. That's kind of what the Brett Sports Talk Show is about.
Can you talk about what are some of your favorite moments of being the Piedmont play-by-play?
My favorite moment, I love this question. I really do love this question. My favorite moment, I'll even send you the video, Brandon. I'll send it to you, and I want you to tell me what you think about it. But favorite moment I had was last year. It was our second homestand. It was a Friday night game, and it was a 1-1 game, bottom of the ninth. It was freezing cold. Brandon, I kid you not, man. I had on 2 pairs of socks, and I could barely feel my toes. And I had on no gloves. I was cold. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I was freezing. But the only thing that kept me warm was just talking. I could talking on the broadcast. So we get to the bottom of the ninth inning. There's 1 or 2 outs, I can't remember. And we had our left-handed freshman. He's same year as I am, James Whitmer. He was our starting third baseman. He steps up to the plate. We got a guy on second and third. I know that for sure. I can't remember if the bases were loaded or not. We had a guy on second and third, but it's 1-1. So you only need one run to win the game. And so Presley and I are sitting there talking, and I say, let's see if James Whitmer can send us home. And he sends a blooper in the right center field, but he hit it just well enough to where the second baseman couldn't get to it. It was too long for him to get to it, but it was too short for the right fielder to get to it. And we scored a run, and I go ballistic on air, and the lines, James Whitmer just walked us off, and he even got a nickname from it, Walk Off Whitmer. And then the video really blew up on Twitter. I can't remember, for a Division III school to get over like 5,000-10,000 views on a video is really big. So that was by far my favorite moment. But another moment I had it was really just a game. Was I drove down, since we've been home from break, I drove down to Piedmont and called the Piedmont men's game a few Saturdays ago with my good buddy Davis Barlow, and Piedmont played lights out basketball, and it was a great game. And I have a new saying: if you watch NBA basketball, you know Drano from Mike Green. Well, I mean, you know Bang from Mike Green. Well, mine's Drano. So anytime a Lion makes a 3-pointer, it's Drano. So that's kind of my favorite moment so far. Obviously, hopefully there's a lot more of those to make. So.
Do you only cover baseball and basketball, or do you cover all sports like softball and lacrosse?
So last year I was penciled in to do softball, but I'm also the president of our debate team at Piedmont College. So I had to go to Charlotte for a debate tournament, and I was unable to do the softball games. But I'm sure this year, obviously I've already covered basketball, and I'll cover most of the basketball games. I'll cover most of the baseball games. And hopefully softball, because I really enjoy softball. I really enjoy. We have a very good team at Piedmont, and softball will be something I know for sure that I'll be covering this year as well. Lacrosse, I'll be honest with you, Brandon, I don't know too much about lacrosse. It's not something I grew up watching, but I would not be opposed to doing it. I've kind of talked to my boss here and there about it because our main lacrosse broadcaster left Piedmont after last semester, so we'll see. If they throw me in there, they throw me in there. But really the three main sports that I focus on is basketball, baseball, and softball. And Piedmont, unfortunately, does not have a football team, or that would be something that I would love to do as well. So,
what are some of your future plans after graduating Piedmont?
So after graduating Piedmont, we'll rewind that back. This summer, I'm looking to do an internship. So if anybody watches this and has a broadcasting internship you'd be open to, please, by all means, contact me or contact Brandon, and he can contact me. I want to been applying to a lot of internships this year and then trying to get one. But after graduation, I'm the sports editor for our newspaper at Piedmont, the Roar. I'm the sports editor there. Love to write. I'm the assistant radio station manager at our radio station, 98.7 FM. And I'm also president of Piedmont Debate and do the play-by-play, which is most importantly my favorite thing that I do at Piedmont. So really, I would like for it to be somewhat a combination, hopefully, of the two or three, to write and do play-by-play or to do play-by-play and have my own sports talk radio show. I absolutely just love talking about sports, but I would have to say play-by-play is really my passion. Play-by-play is something that, I prepare for a lot, but it's something that you prepare for so much. And then when you get on air and you get that ninth inning walk-off, or you get that last-second buzzer beater, it's so refreshing that you know that you put in 2 hours of preparation and to see that happen. So really, I would like to go anywhere, any place. It doesn't matter, and hopefully have a play-by-play broadcast opportunity after I graduate.
What are some of your future plans with the Brett Sports Talk Show?
The Brett Sports Talk Show, I'll be honest with you, probably I'll try to go live once a week. Brandon, I don't know if you have Instagram. I would love to have you on there with me as well, and you talk sports with me, and just have certain guests on there. Just seems that, a lot of people my age or a lot of my friends, and once they went back to college, it seems like everyone's so busy. So it's the only reason I hadn't been able to get back live on there. But I'd love to go live on there and just talk about sports. And it's something live, obviously. And if it's live, it's something that's always fluid and always changing. That's why I love radio so much. That's why I love going live on the Brett Sports Talk Show. So that would really be some of my future plans on there.
What advice would you give upcoming future sports play-by-plays that are looking to get into being a sports broadcaster for play-by-play?
Be yourself, most definitely. Be yourself and keep your energy up. I think me being on air, as you can already tell, I have a bit of a country accent undertone. And, I'm not going to sit here and talk like I'm singing a country song. But in the same sense, I'm not going to try to mask that out. And I'm always going to try to keep the energy up. If you keep the energy up on a play-by-play broadcast, especially if your team is the team, if you're broadcasting for a team and the team is winning, you need to keep the energy up, because if you don't keep the energy up, the listeners are probably either going to mute you or they're not going to want to listen to the broadcast anymore. So you got to keep your energy up. You got to keep the viewer entertained, because most importantly, they're tuned in to watch the game. You are just there mostly, and you want to be so good, and you want to have people tune in to really listen to you call the game. And I think that's some of your true broadcasters have done that. I mean, if you look at guys like Al Michaels on Sunday Night Football, if you look at guys like Bob Costas, if you look at guys like Vin Scully in baseball, I mean, you look at guys like that and the way that they've changed the game to where if you watch a game to listen to those guys commentate. I mean, you could care less who's playing football. You could care less who the Dodgers are playing that night, but you would tune in and watch Vin Scully and tune in and watch Al Michaels play or to call them a baseball and a football game. So I think that's really, you have to take control, but you can't be overbearing on the broadcast. And I think that would be a very, very key thing there.
Who are some people that inspired you to be sports broadcasters?
Definitely some of my inspiration guys who I take stuff from would be Hawk Harrelson, the former play-by-play guy for the Chicago White Sox, Gus Johnson, who does play-by-play for college football on Fox now, Bob Costas, as I just mentioned, and Chip Carey, who's the play-by-play guy for the Atlanta Braves. Growing up listening to really those four guys, they have kind of helped my style, help mold what my style is to be an up-tempo, energetic guy, being a guy that's not afraid to challenge if I think something's wrong on air, because obviously I'm just trying to let the viewer watch the game. But if I have an opinion that would be strongly felt by everybody, I have to voice that opinion for the viewer as well. Joe Simpson, a guy that used to call TV for the Braves, now does radio. He was a guy that would always be, I don't want to say controversial, but he would say what he thought on air. And I try to do that as well. Not challenge the referees, but if they make a bad call, say that it was a bad call. I mean, straight up, you don't want to sit there and dog on them for 3 innings. But if a ref makes a bad call, I mean, for example, last year, we had a guy slide into third base. He was safe by a mile, and they caught him out. Well, I called umpires out on air, and our head baseball coach came and contacted Presley and I later that week, and he goes, well, the umpires thought that you guys were a little tough on him. He goes, but I think you did a great job. And all in all, that has to be your style. And I think I've really taken that from guys like Hawk Harrelson. I mean, you go watch his highlights on YouTube. He was very critical of umpires when they needed to hear it. And I'm not saying that you have to sit there. That's just one example. I'm not sitting there saying to diss on umpires every broadcast, but those guys are definitely helped mold my style. And obviously my father, with sports, he helped influence sports and my love for sports growing up. So really that would be my influence being a sports broadcaster.
That's wonderful. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
So Brett M. Loftis is going to be BRETTMLOFTIS. You can find my Twitter and Instagram at both of those same handles. And you can also find me on LinkedIn at that handle as well. You can find me at Brett Lofftis on YouTube. And then Good Morning Sports is GMS Podcast 2020. You might have to put all these in the description of the video. And then on Instagram, it's at Brett, BRETT Sports Talk Show, sports being plural there. So that's where all my social media handles are, and that's where you can find all my stuff at.
Thank you again, Brett Loftin, for your interview, and best of luck at Peppermint for your sports broadcasting and along with your sports podcast.
Thank you, Brandon. I really appreciate it, man.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at @talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Brett, for your interview, and best of luck.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.